Welcome back. So the last video here for Chapter 7 in Industrial Organization, we're going to talk about vertical product differentiation. And vertical product differentiation is when we all agree that there's some single characteristic that is better in one product than the other. And we call that quality, right? That's kind of the definition of quality. And so all consumers prefer the product with more quality as opposed to less quality. But the reason that multiple products exist is because uh, consumers prefer different levels of quality versus price, right? So at the same price, everybody would buy the higher quality product and nobody would buy the lower quality product. But because we have different preferences, some people are willing to spend more to buy the higher quality product, and some people will choose to spend less and buy the lower quality product. All right, so how are we going to model this? Well, it's actually not that different than our horizontal product differentiation. We're going to assume that there's two brands, 1 and 2, and they have some level of quality Z. And we'll assume, just for simplicity, that brand 1 has higher quality than brand 2. So Z1 is larger than Z2. And each consumer has a unit demand again. So that, remember, that just means that they buy one unit, but a different strength of preference for quality. And so we're going to capture that with our theta here. And so every consumer is going to have some theta between theta L and theta H. And we will assume, just for simplicity, that theta H minus theta L is equal to 1. That's not that different than our sort of 1 mile road in the hoteling model, right? And so we'll assume that there's some number of consumers, N, uniformly distributed along that interval, theta H to theta L. And so if you are closer to theta L, then you put less strength on quality. If you're closer to theta H, you put more strength on quality. You're more willing to pay. And so if we graph this, right, I think the graph is really the most intuitive thing. So here we have the utility of buying, right? And if somebody doesn't care about utility about quality at all, right, then they just get some utility theta, right, times Z. So Z1 is higher than Z2 minus the price that they have to pay. And so for all of these people up to this point, utility for the lower quality product, 2, is higher than utility for the higher quality product, right? Because they don't care as much about quality because they're closer to theta L, and so they buy the lower quality product. The person that's just indifferent, theta M, is right here. And then after that, people get more utility from buying the higher quality product than they do from buying the lower quality product. Now, anybody who would get negative utility from buying just doesn't buy at all, right? So, these people would get negative utility from buying U1. These people would get negative utility from buying 2. But in this case, we still have a covered market because, remember, we're going from theta L to theta H. And so there's always a clear preference, right? These people are going to buy the lower quality product, and then we're going to switch, and these people are going to buy the higher quality product. So we can get firm demand the same way, right? So, it's not that different, right? It's just going to be this distance for firm 2 and this distance for firm 1. And so for the marginal consumer, right, where the utilities are equal, we end up with P1 minus P2 over Z. And Z is just defined as that Z1 minus Z2 and the difference in utility. And so consumers with a low value of quality located to the left will receive greater utility from buying the low quality brand or brand 2. And consumers to the right will prefer to buy brand 1, right? So from theta L to theta 1, from theta L to theta M, that's demand for Q2, right? And from theta H to theta M, that's the demand for Q1. We just multiply by the N consumers, and then we just plug in theta H minus theta M, and we get these demand functions, right? And again, we get very similar results where it's decreasing in the firm's own price and increasing in the other firm's price. And that's going to be something that we see all the time, right? If your competitor is charging a really high price, then you can get away with charging more. And if your competitor is charging a lower price, then you're also going to have to charge less. And then, of course, we just have the sort of law of demand where if you charge more, demand is less, and if you charge less, demand is more. So I think one of the interesting questions that we should really all be able to answer as economics majors is, why do higher quality products cost more in terms of their price? And so one of the answers is really looking at firm costs, right? And so we can think of total cost as, we'll just assume it's linear, right? Where we have some fixed cost F and some marginal cost C, so that the cost is just C times however much you produce, QI, plus the fixed cost. And if firm 1 has lower costs than firm 2, then either we know that C1 is less than C2 and or F1 is less than F2. So either their marginal costs are lower or their fixed costs are lower. And if that's true, then we say that firm 1 has superior cost efficiency, right? They're able to produce at a lower cost. Now, some products, it doesn't matter, right? Like, so, most, painting a car a different color for the most part probably doesn't change the cost that much. A grocery store located on the north side versus the south side is going to have pretty much the same costs, right? Now, that might not always be true. But again, we can make some basic assumptions that location isn't going to change too much. But some horizontal characteristics do affect cost, right? So if you can, like the example they give is sweetened and unsweetened cornflakes. Some people prefer sweetened, some people prefer unsweetened. But since sweetened have an extra ingredient, namely sugar, then that's going to increase their costs. And so that will have to be taken into account by firms that are setting those prices, right? And so you might decide, okay, I might want to have the same price, even though my costs are different because of the way that preferences are distributed, or I might want to charge a higher price for, the sweetened cornflakes and a lower price for the unsweetened. Now, there could even be examples where you would actually want to charge a higher price for the cheaper product, but usually that won't work, right? And usually competition will make sure that the higher costs lead to higher prices. And I think that's really the key, right? So when we have these cost asymmetries with vertical differentiation, so with differentiation in quality, then that's going to make sense, right? And we'll have the higher cost, higher quality, have a higher price, and the lower cost, lower quality have a lower price. But sometimes that's not true, right? Sometimes there's a change in technology where we get a big leap in quality and actually a lower cost. And in that case, what do we expect to happen? So you should think about it. And in that case, if a firm comes up with a lower cost, higher quality product, they should be able to price at the same price as the lower quality one and take all of the business, right? And drive out that lower quality product. And so competition really sort of should, for the most part, assure that we get higher costs with higher quality products, right? That we're actually getting something that costs more in that vertical differentiation, right? So the example here is if brand 1 is of higher quality, then we'll have either marginal cost or fixed costs that are higher. And then that will mean that we have generally a higher price for the higher quality product. Now, the last thing we want to think about is that product differentiation can be a fairly complicated thing, right? So sometimes we can find out all about, the characteristics and figure out the differentiation before we even make a purchase. So, the internet, of course, makes this a lot easier. We can, read reviews of products. We can see different specifications of products. and see which one is higher quality, which one's lower quality, which one might fit better in our horizontal preferences. And so I would say even more goods are sort of search goods, where we can find out the product's characteristics before making a purchase than they were before. But some goods are experience goods. Some goods we just have to experience in order to know how much we like it, right? No matter how much you read about like a certain food, you really, if you've never tried it before, you really don't know whether you're going to like it until you try it, right? And you can think about some like even like, vacations, hotels. You can read descriptions, but you really won't know if whether it's a good product for you until you experience it. A credence good is that it's uneconomic for consumers to identify product characteristics even after purchase, right? And so that's sort of it's an extreme example, but most goods I would say are either search goods or experience goods, and I would say more and more goods now kind of tend to be search goods. But of course, that means that we can spend even more time sort of researching purchases before we make it, which takes, even longer. All right, so that's the end of chapter 7, all about product differentiation, which is something we definitely see in the real world, and really goes into how firms, set their prices and how they divide up markets. And, thinking about the difference between horizontal product differentiation, which is really all about taste, and vertical product differentiation, which is about quality, I think helps you characterize a lot of firm decisions more easily than you could otherwise do.